They were slashed by critics, forbidden by censors, and tossed into obscurity. But these movies clawed their way back. From blood-soaked revenge tales to outrageous midnight spectacles, these 15 films shattered every rule cinema had. This isn't polished Hollywood fare. This is raw, unapologetic grindhouse cinema at its wildest. Let's dive into the films that became legends by being too dangerous to ignore. 1. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Director Tobe Hooper crafted this nightmare on almost no money, using unknown actors and sheer atmosphere instead of explicit blood. 5 young people stumble onto a rural property inhabited by a cannibalistic family, including the iconic masked killer Leatherface. What makes it terrifying isn't what you see, it's what you feel. The oppressive heat, the grinding machinery, the screaming, it overwhelms your senses. Critics condemned it. Countries banned it. But audiences packed midnight screenings anyway. Hooper later said the film reflected the madness of the Vietnam era and Watergate, a world where life had lost meaning. The killer family sits down for meals together, jokes around, argues like any household. That ordinary behavior makes them horrifying. This movie launched sequels, remakes, and influenced countless horror filmmakers. It changed how violence was depicted on screen and remains one of the most important horror films ever created. 2. Blood Feast, 1963. Herschel Gordon Lewis essentially invented gore cinema with this $24,000 production. The story follows a deranged caterer named Fuad Ramses, who murders young women to harvest their body parts for an ancient Egyptian ritual feast. Audiences in 1963 had never witnessed anything like it. People vomited. Others stormed out. But teenagers and drive-in crowds couldn't get enough. The tagline promised, "Nothing so appalling in the annals of horror." And it delivered. The acting was stiff, the effects primitive, bright paint and animal organs, and the plot barely coherent. None of that mattered. Lewis understood that shock value alone could sell tickets. This film spawned sequels and inspired future gore directors like Eli Roth. It proved that blood could be a storytelling device, not just a visual trick. 3. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. Italian director Ruggero Deodato created something so realistic that authorities charged him with murder, forcing him to prove in court that his actors were still alive. The film follows a rescue team searching the Amazon for missing documentary filmmakers. What they discover is disturbing footage showing the crew provoking native tribes until violence consumed everyone. This pioneered the found footage format nearly 20 years before the Blair Witch Project. More than 50 countries banned it. The real animal killings remain deeply controversial. But beneath the shocking imagery lies sharp criticism of media exploitation and Western arrogance. The real monsters aren't the indigenous people. They're the filmmakers staging atrocities for ratings. Horror scholars now consider it a brutal but important work that redefined what horror could say about society. 4. Pink Flamingos, 1972. John Waters declared open war on respectability with this $10,000 underground sensation. Divine, the legendary 300-pound drag performer, plays Babs Johnson, who proudly claims the title of filthiest person alive while battling rivals who want that crown. The plot barely exists, just a series of increasingly outrageous scenes involving taboo acts that still shock viewers today. The notorious finale, where Divine consumes actual dog waste on camera, became underground legend. Waters never wanted mainstream success. He wanted to create art for outsiders, for the freaks, for anyone who felt rejected by polite society. Critics were divided. Some called it garbage, others compared him to a punk rock version of Fellini. Eventually, the Library of Congress added it to the National Film Registry as culturally significant. proof that sometimes the most offensive work becomes the most unforgettable. 5. Coffy, 1973. Pam Grier became the queen of blaxploitation cinema with this Jack Hill-directed powerhouse. She plays a nurse whose sister falls into heroin addiction, sparking a one-woman war against the drug dealers and corrupt officials responsible. Grier brought fire to every scene. Armed with a shotgun and unstoppable determination, Coffy infiltrates criminal networks, seduces her targets, and destroys them from within. She doesn't wait for rescue. She does the rescuing. In an era dominated by male-led crime dramas, having a black woman at the center was revolutionary. Critics initially dismissed it as just another exploitation flick. Scholars later recognized how it tackled serious issues: racism, misogyny, systemic corruption beneath its pulp surface. This film paved the way for Grier's later roles and influenced everything from hip-hop culture to Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown. It remains as fierce and relevant as ever. 6. Lady Snowblood, 1973. Long before Kill Bill, this Japanese masterpiece set the template for stylized revenge cinema. Director Toshiya Fujita tells the story of Yuki, born in prison during a blizzard, raised from infancy for a single purpose: avenging her mother and family. The film unfolds in chapters as Yuki hunts the 4 people who destroyed her life. Blood sprays in elegant arcs, choreographed like dance. But the beauty masks profound tragedy. Yuki isn't triumphant. She's trapped by destiny. Based on a manga by Kazuo Koike, creator of Lone Wolf and Cub, the film blends pulp action with genuine artistry. Quentin Tarantino openly acknowledged borrowing its visual style, costumes, and snowy showdown for Kill Bill. But Lady Snowblood stands powerfully on its own. Meiko Kaji's portrayal is mesmerizing, cold, graceful, devastating. This film proved Grindhouse cinema could achieve genuine artistic beauty. 7. I Spit on Your Grave, 1978. Few films have generated such fierce debate. Director Mir Zarchi created this unfiltered story of Jennifer Hills, a writer who retreats to a rural cabin only to suffer horrific assault by local men. Left for dead, she survives and systematically executes each attacker. Roger Ebert called it garbage. Multiple countries banned it outright. The violence is unflinching, almost unbearable. But others saw something different: a survival story where the victim refuses to wait for rescue. She becomes her own instrument of justice. The low budget and raw style make everything feel disturbingly real. Over decades, feminist scholars and film theorists have debated whether it's empowering or exploitative. It spawned sequels and remakes, proving it struck a nerve that won't fade. Whatever your verdict, this film carved itself permanently into horror history. 8. Faster, Pussycat, Kill, Kill, 1965. 3 go-go dancers race muscle cars through the Mojave Desert, leaving destruction in their wake. Director Russ Meyer crafted this fever dream of attitude and aggression that landed like a slap in 1965. After killing a man in a spontaneous act, the trio, Varla, Rosie, and Billy, descend on a remote ranch occupied by a wheelchair-bound man and his sons. What follows is manipulation, violence, and power struggles where women aren't victims, they're predators. Mainstream audiences ignored it. Critics dismissed it. But underground viewers recognized something revolutionary: women who controlled their own stories. Punk rockers, feminists, and midnight movie crowds adopted it as a symbol of rebellion. Tura Satana's volcanic performance as Varla redefined female power on screen. Martial arts skills, dominatrix confidence, absolute command of every scene. Quentin Tarantino once declared it the greatest movie ever made. Generations keep discovering this wild artifact from the mid-60s. 9. The Last House on the Left, 1972. Before Wes Craven became famous for Nightmare on Elm Street, he unleashed this raw debut that blurred exploitation and social horror. Two teenage girls are kidnapped, tortured, and killed by criminals who then unknowingly seek shelter at one victim's home. When the parents discover the truth, they exact savage revenge. The marketing urged audiences, keep telling yourself it's only a movie. Many couldn't. The handheld camera work and naturalistic acting made everything feel sickeningly real. Critics condemned it. Censors banned it. Horror fans couldn't look away. Craven, a former humanities professor, embedded commentary on violence cycles and suburban hypocrisy. When faced with horror, how far would ordinary people go? The film was remade in 2009, and its influence echoes through decades of horror. Craven built his legendary career on this uncompromising foundation. 10. Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, 1975. This remains one of exploitation cinema's most controversial entries. Set in a Nazi medical camp, it follows Ilsa, a sadistic warden conducting horrific experiments on prisoners. Diane Thorne's terrifying performance made the character both commanding and repugnant. The explicit torture and violence caused outrage. Multiple countries banned it. Critics denounced it as tasteless. But midnight movie audiences flocked to screenings, drawn by morbid curiosity about wartime atrocities mixed with horror and eroticism. The film spawned 3 unofficial sequels, placing Ilsa in different nightmarish settings. Thorne became a Grindhouse icon. Fans interpreted it as an extreme statement about unchecked power and cruelty. It's definitely not for sensitive viewers, but for exploitation historians, it's a brutal landmark that refuses to disappear. 11. Switchblade Sisters, 1975. At first glance, this looks like typical juvenile delinquent fare. But Jack Hill, who also directed Coffy, embedded feminist rage and genuine social commentary beneath the gang warfare and grindhouse styling. The story follows the Dagger Debs, an all-female gang connected to the male Silver Daggers. When betrayal and ambition tear the group apart, Maggie seizes leadership and leads the women into open battle. These aren't damsels. They're switchblade-wielding warriors fighting corrupt cops, rival gangs, and treacherous allies. The film flopped initially, pulled from theaters within weeks. But in the 1990s, Quentin Tarantino rediscovered it and re-released it through his Rolling Thunder Pictures label, calling it an incredible mix of Shakespearean betrayal and feminist revolution. That endorsement finally brought the audience it deserved. Today, it stands tall among cult legends, proof that sisterhood can be as savage as any street war. 12. Thriller, A Cruel Picture, 1973. Also known as They Call Her One Eye, this Swedish revenge film was so brutal that multiple countries banned or heavily censored it. Director Bo Arne Vibenius tells the story of Frigga, a woman rendered mute by childhood trauma, then kidnapped, drugged, and forced into prostitution. But Frigga secretly trains in martial arts, weapons, and driving, preparing for violent retribution. The slow-motion gunfights and Christina Lindberg's silent, eye-patch-wearing performance became iconic images of exploitation feminism. The film is notorious for including explicit content that pushed it into X-rated territory. Yet fans appreciated its raw, nihilistic vision. Quentin Tarantino borrowed both Lindberg's look and story elements for Kill Bill. Frigga's transformation from victim to avenger is disturbing, but oddly empowering. This uncompromising intensity made it a cornerstone of exploitation's golden era. Once reviled, now revered. 13. Ms. 45, 1981. Abel Ferrara crafted this haunting urban thriller set in early 1980s New York. Thana, a mute garment worker played with chilling intensity by Zoe Lund, suffers 2 assaults in one day. she transforms into a vigilante, stalking the city streets with a .45 caliber pistol. There's no catharsis here, only desperation and escalating madness. Ferrara asks uncomfortable questions. What happens when society offers no protection? What becomes of someone whose voice is stolen twice, first by disability, then by violence? The film received harsh criticism initially, but over time, feminist scholars, horror enthusiasts, and independent filmmakers recognized its provocative power. The final scene, Thana dressed as a nun, wielding her gun at a Halloween party, became iconic. This isn't a movie that comforts, it haunts. 14. Sheba, Baby, 1975. Pam Grier returned with a slightly polished vehicle that maintained her signature attitude. She plays Sheba Shane, a Chicago private investigator who travels to Louisville, Kentucky, to help her father fight gangsters trying to muscle him out of his loan business. Compared to Grier's grittier earlier work, this softens some brutal edges. Less blood, less sleaze, but plenty of action. Sheba pilots speedboats, dodges bullets, and delivers threats with deadly confidence. Even when the script lags, Grier commands attention. Filmed largely in Kentucky, the movie explored small-town politics, racism, and organized crime through a blaxploitation lens. It also presented Grier as both action hero and style icon. Reviews were mixed. Some felt it was watered down, others appreciated the accessibility. But it solidified Grier's legendary status. Justice arrives dressed in elegance, riding a speedboat, and packing a serious punch. 15. Reefer Madness, 1936. Before Grindhouse theaters existed, this propaganda piece stood as early exploitation cinema's strangest artifact. Originally titled Tell Your Children, it was meant to frighten parents about marijuana. Clean-cut students take one puff and immediately descend into jazz music, violence, insanity, and suicide. The message was clear. Marijuana destroys lives instantly. But the hysterical acting and exaggerated scenes, maniacal laughter, frenzied piano playing, became unintentionally hilarious. Originally shown in churches and community centers as educational material, the film disappeared until the 1970s. Pro-marijuana activists rediscovered it and began screening it ironically. Suddenly, the dated fear-mongering became comedy gold. College campuses and midnight movie circuits embraced it as a kitschy treasure. What started as government propaganda transformed into counterculture satire. It's now studied in film classes as a case study in moral panic. It even inspired a musical adaptation. Whether viewed as comedy or cautionary tale, it remains timeless proof that absurdity taken seriously can accidentally become entertainment gold. These 15 films didn't just shock, they endured. Born from controversy, built on rebellion, and remembered for fearless storytelling, they became cult legends. Whether sleazy, stylish, or subversive, they prove that cinema's most daring work often comes from the fringes. Which one would you watch first?